Welcome to the Change Within podcast. This is Gerard Uselli here. This is episode 24, and all walks of life have just been spurring in to talk about their change and how they embrace it. This next person I've connected with through LinkedIn about 6 months ago, and ironically, our podcast journeys have come on right around the same time. This person is no exception to the rule, a great go getter, and her name is Abigail Amengual. Abigail, how are you?
I'm good. How are you? Thank you for having me.
Doing great. And yes, as I like to ask every single guest who's been on my podcast before, what was your childhood like growing up?
My childhood, it was pretty awesome. I have to say, I can't complain.
Absolutely. I feel like when it comes down to it, people's childhoods, when it's come to reflection, it's weird how many certain things can come alongside with it. Because, like, for me, one example is I didn't even realize how much sports I used to play growing up. I played about like 7 sports. And then, aside from going to the gym today, do I have any sense of competence or athleticism behind that? Probably not. But nonetheless, it's something that people always kind of like embrace themselves to do. I feel like you learn something from everything, right?
Yeah, I played basketball. I used to love it, and I was so athletic.
Oh yeah, as far as like your basketball stuff, like tell me a little bit more about it. Like, how did you feel like you were good at it?
I thought I was good. I was a forward because I was tall. I played all through up until eighth grade. High school, I did try out my freshman year, but I didn't make it. They
Any
they said
slam
they would have
dunks?
they told me they would want me as a forward, which I was, but I needed to be faster. And the girls that tried out, they were just super. They did track as well, so they had the speed down.
Oh my god, I can only imagine. As far as like trying to keep up and stuff like that, I'll definitely say this. So, coming from like the sports background, I know something that you were into at a younger age was also doing like broadcasting growing up. What was one show that kind of inspired you to try to be in front of the camera?
One show that inspired me to be in front of the camera. I don't know if this is considered as a show, the daytime show, actually, Ellen DeGeneres. I've always admired her journey, especially with just her personal decisions. Her coming out, for example, took a turn on her career because obviously she lost her show, and then for her to come back in the early 2000s with her show that's still running today, and her motto of just be kind to everybody and to each other, I live by that. And I definitely, if I was to choose how I want my career to turn out in the future, would be like her. So I do definitely believe watching her growing up inspired me to become a news reporter, media reporter.
I also think with the synergies of coming off, I mean, of course, you can't show biasness in doing the news. However, there is personalization no matter what the network you're actually on. So, like, when you first started going out to do like your reporting, like, what was kind of like your first type of statuses? What were some of your like first odd jobs doing the reporting?
I'm actually graduating now in May with my degree, actually. But the first couple times I did interviews, I tried to do local businesses in my area to just promote them. When I started doing interviews, I started doing an Instagram live series called "What's the Biz New Jersey," where I spotlighted local businesses, just so to help them through the pandemic. For example, there was a lady who she was a interior designer. She also did fittings, alterations for brides. And obviously she was losing business because every event that she had to alter or anything had to be canceled. All the events were canceled. So she had decided to start creating masks. And she would sell these masks and then use the profit to make more masks. And those masks would be donated to local hospitals for free. So I interviewed her and kind of put a spotlight on her so more people would know who she is, buy from her, so then she could go donate more for our essential healthcare workers.
Now, kind of like an off-topic question with this too. Maybe with other businesses that you have interviewed, was there ever a time where the story compelled you so much to the point where you actually bought something from them amid the pandemic?
I mean, yes, I definitely bought. Obviously, I bought one of her masks, and as well as other businesses I interviewed were restaurants. So I made sure to order from them, and when I did, to tag them and tell my friends about it.
Absolutely. And kind of like with your style, especially as you've gotten more experience, maybe personally or in the sense of like the business of doing reporting, are you more of an extrovert or an introvert?
I'm an extrovert person all around, career, personal life.
I feel like nonetheless, people who are extroverts, they know how to make things a lifestyle. Like
Mhm.
it's part of their persona.
Absolutely.
And kind of going into more of your own thing, especially since you started your own podcast, how did the Chicas Projects podcast come about?
So, like I said, I'm graduating in May from Kane University with my bachelor's in media communications and Spanish, media communications, film, and Spanish. So, I'm double majoring. And it was actually started as a class that I took last fall semester called Intro to Podcasting. And it was a requirement. And we had to tape a total of 5 episodes. And obviously in the class, we learned how to podcast, what was our niche, what was our how to promote it, how to get people to listen, why should people listen to us, what made our podcast so special. So throughout the semester, I just fell in love with it, started having people. On my third episode, I actually had my first guest, and I just felt that this is something, not to sound conceited, but it's something I felt that I was good at. And I felt that if I really worked hard and I applied myself, because I know this is not an industry that you're easily to succeed in. If I really applied myself and I worked hard, I could be good at. And I feel like this is somewhere, it's a very small podcast. It's not big yet, but I feel if I apply myself throughout time and hard work, I could get somewhere with it. So once the semester was over, I didn't have to continue it. It was
Mhm.
not, I did it for class, but I chose to continue it. So now I do it for my own time. Unfortunately, I don't make any income from it, but it's something I enjoy to do. And I hope that one day it could turn into a full-time career.
I think in the aspects of monetization as well, we all aspire to get to that point. So for me, I haven't been in college in the capacity of getting a bachelor's in about 10 years. So
Mhm.
times definitely changed since then. What I'm curious about is when you were learning podcasting in academic setting, what was that kind of like? And then what was that transpiration process like when you decided to go on your own doing the podcast?
Well, the in the class, we had requirements. We had to have 5 segments, and it was all for a purpose. And we had to have a time limit on our episodes. And the purpose of that was how to report, how to spread out the 5 segments in the time that she set. So we learned how to time manage, how to, not just ramble off at words, which is what I'm doing right now, and just learn how to podcast. And then if we had commercials, if we had sponsorships, how we would fit into that as well. Versus once I left the class, I was free to do what I wanted. So I changed it up a bit. I think it is a good class. I told my professor it's a class I should continue, because I would have never started this podcast if it wasn't for that class. I would have never in a million years imagined me hosting a podcast. And it's not easy.
No,
I'm
it's
learning it.
not.
It's terrifying, especially, you're sharing yourself. You're opening yourself up to strangers.
With that retrospect, like what have you learned about yourself to keep a podcast engaging?
I've learned that if I want my audience to like me and to want to listen to me and to trust me, I have to open up and let them know who I am. They're not going to want to listen to a podcast if they don't know who the host is. So I had to open myself and tell them things that I've experienced in my life that I never thought I would ever say out loud, for them to actually listen and relate and be able to say, you know what? I understand what you're going through. I went through that too.
And in that regard, what's a past episode slash topic that you pushed yourself to talk about?
My last episode that premiered on last Sunday, the 7th, I talked about, the title was Your Husband Got Fired for Cheating, Now What? And don't let the title fool you. It was a very serious episode. I talked about the current allegations against the New York governor, Andrew Cuomo. I talked about work harassment and work affairs. And in that episode, I talked about how when I was 19, I worked at a retirement home, excuse me, and I was sexually harassed by a manager. He physically assaulted me. He put his hand down my blouse while I was having lunch, and I stayed quiet. I didn't do anything. I didn't stop him. I didn't say anything, and he got away with it. That wasn't something easy for me to share. My parents didn't know about this incident until about a year ago. So then for me to tell the whole world when I've kept the secret for almost 10 years, yeah, it was scary. And I was scared of how people would react.
To kind of make a point on this too, and to play defense, especially on a woman's side, when you experience trauma, whether it's in that regard or in any, something that kind of irks me on the sense of debate is why haven't you told people sooner? And that just irritates me to no end because the time will always come when you feel like the truth needs to be exposed. It takes a sense of reflection, and that reflection takes time for anyone to come to the truth about themselves and how they need to communicate that. So I just never understood any sense of validation behind that, as far as like, oh, if something happens, tell right away. It's not the same for everyone. No one can fit that mold as far as like one person after another.
You should tell them right away. That's the right thing to do. But in my situation, and I'm sure in many situations, I was 19. And even though at 19 you think you're an adult, you're still a child. And I was scared. This man was well over 20 years older than me. It's always one of those, you don't think it's going to happen to you. You always say, if this happened to me, I would react like this until it happens. And then you don't know how to react. I was scared. I should have reacted different. Now, being that I'm 28, oh, I would absolutely react different. I would be much more aggressive, but I didn't say anything. And it doesn't make me a bad person. It doesn't say that I deserved it. I was scared and now I know better. And when I have a daughter, I'm going to tell her about my story. So God forbid she gets into a situation like this, she'll react better than I did.
Exactly. And in those growing pains and learning points, it is very essential to make sure that when something happens to you, especially after experiencing it, you don't want to make the same mistake twice for yourself.
Absolutely. Hmm.
And just in a general sense, as we conclude, and also another question I like to ask everyone is, what is the biggest change you want to see for yourself this year?
I have been working on my physical health, getting my body back. Quarantine didn't do me any favors, other than my physical health. Um, I just want to go out more, especially that I'm finishing school. I kind of stopped the partying years ago and I kind of miss it. And I just want to kind of celebrate life. I'm in a much happier place. A few years ago, I was struggling with depression and mental health, and I'm at a much happier place. My mental health is where it needs to be. Now I just have to work on my physical health, which I've been working at. Summer's around the corner and I've already bought my, bikini goal swimsuit. But other than that, I wanna be snatched back, and I wanna go out this summer, especially that I'll be done with school, and go out and with my friends and go out dancing. I'm hoping everything will go back to normal and just enjoy the summer and enjoy these couple months coming up.
Well, I must say, let's hope that's the change for everybody, because I am a summer baby myself, born in August, and the birthday will definitely resonate as far as any summer goals in that regard. So on that note, this concludes episode 24 for the Change of Him podcast. Abigail, thank you very much. And for those who want to follow us, you can do so on Anchor, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Abigail, have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.